All right, so one of my students has actually sent me a shear the other day. They were having some trouble with set in the early entry of the shear, and they asked if I would be able to help. So I said, send it along, I'll take a look at it. Can't guarantee that I'd be able to make it work or not, but I did my best with it. I wasn't a perfect shear when it was done, but as far as cosmetics was concerned, but certainly functionally, it cut just fine. So come on along for the ride. I'll show you what I did and how I achieved getting the shear back from its failed condition up into its, well, reborn condition, I guess, for lack of a better term. This is a former student of mine that sent this to me. He had not done any work on the edge of the shear at this point. He just noticed the set was really bad. He started to play around with the set, work the inside of the shear just a little bit, started to get frustrated with it and said, is there somebody else that can take a look at it? So he asked me if I would take a look at it for him. Anyway, let me show you what I did. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do before we start on the shear is we're going to go ahead and check the set with the shear together. You can actually see on the shear that it's really flat back here in the ride area. It does have decent set all the way down to the tip, which means the set problem is actually in the pivot area, which makes this blade and the shear a lot more difficult to deal with. Let me show you a little bit of what's going on with this here. If I try and cut this tissue, you can see it'll cut in that very early entry, but then it just completely folds all the way down the shear. So we're gonna start by actually trying to do a little bit of set work right in this back area back here. All right, so we're going to start off by doing some hammering across over the top of the shear. This is a heel dolly. You can purchase a heel dolly at any place, really. I got this one from Harbor Freight. Heel dollies are used for banging dents out of cars. And I'm going to go ahead and just strike over the top of the ride area. Come back over the top of the spine. Now you can hear how the sound changes. As I come over the top, what I'm doing is I'm not going along with the shear. If I actually move the shear along, you can hear that the sound doesn't really change. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bend the shear over the curvature of the dolly in that ride area. So that's where we're going to start. And holding the handle actually close to the head gives you a lot more control over the strike. There's numerous ways you can do this too. If you have a wooden block and the wooden block is cupped out, you can always hammer from the inside as well. I just don't like to hammer on the inside because of the ride line. All right, we'll start there with that blade. Gonna do the same thing with the second. I'm pushing down with my thumb while I do this. We're going to clean up this top edge too, because the fellow that sent this to me, looks like he may have hammered over the top, and we're going to want to make sure we clean that up before that's done. So I'm going to continue with this until I do a little bit more bend. All right, it's very hard to see in the video, but I am starting to get just a little bit more light in this area here. I'm trying to actually catch it where you can see it through the video. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to, but just to show you what's going on, you can see that this thing does cut a little bit further up the blade now. You can actually see with a little bit of pressure, it's actually doing some cutting, but it's not cutting well. So we'll have to do some resharpening on that. But you can see just the difference that we've made so far. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit more hammering on this thing in order to be able to bring this thing back in. I typically will take the shears all the way apart, and then I'll put them back together to check the set. There's multiple ways to check the set. There's things like clipper check plates that can be helpful. If I want to use something to really check the flatness of a shear on the inside, I typically use what's called a machinist straight edge, because you're not going to get anything that's more straight than a machinist straight edge, and I'll check over the top of the straight edge. So that's always a big help too. You can check it up against a light like this, or there's actually a number of lighted devices that you can use that can actually help with being able to see. Hamaguri USA sells one that's actually really good. But and they also sell check plates along with other people as well. So anyway, what I like to do is I like to check them while they're together because I like to see how the blades are oriented to one another. That's just personal preference. And all this is just a piece of tissue paper that's hung over my lamp, being held there by a little pink wolf hone. So anyhow, we're going to go ahead and get to hammering again. All right, I've hammered this a few more times. Put my thumb here just to hold some pressure up against the face. Going to come up over the top. You can see how I'm trying to stroke the set across the blade. Another thing that I like to do as well is I actually like to go and do just a couple of quick pulls on the waterstone. And I want to track how the slurry of the metal is coming off and see if we're making contact all the way down the waterstone. So let's take a look. All right, I'm going to swing you over here to this magnifier. Drop this into place here. And you can see that we did create a ride line that's on here. It's not the greatest ride line right now because the ride line's a little bit off on this, but it's not touching in this area right here, and it's not touching up at the tip, as you can see here. So that probably is going to need a little additional set at the tip area as well. We can hammer that in or we can bend that in, but I'll deal with that once I put the shear back together and just take a look overall at what the set is doing. All right, so that's a little bit better. There is some gap that's here. Again, it's hard to see in the video. It's always hard to shoot this view from the video, but if you actually look down the blade, you can actually see that one nice little positive point of contact walk up the blade. You can see it flattens out just a little bit right here, and that's because of that one blade that's having trouble getting to the tip. So we'll deal with that in just a second. All right, so the way that I'm going to deal with this one blade that's off just a little bit and set is I'm going to do a little bit of bend and twist back behind where the problem is. If you remember, you could see it start to go flat just about in this area right here going up the blade. So you want to start behind where the problem is and just gently do a bend and a twist, not a lot. A little bit goes a long way. All right, and now we'll take a look. Come on. There we go, that's better. Take a look at how that tracks. Trying to follow that one little spot. Still flattens out a little bit too much. So we'll add just a little bit more. Again, bend and twist. Do just a little bit on the other blade as well. Although the other blade actually looked pretty good, so I don't want to do too much. One more time. And that's starting to look just a little bit better. All right, so we're going to go to the waterstone and see if we can't bring up a new ride line. All right, so I know it's a bit of a pest to take the shear back apart and then put it back together each time, but this is just my preferred method of actually checking set. Like I said, there's other ways of doing it. I'm going to stop completely on the stone, come off. I'm going to take a look at the work that I just did on the ride line here. Okay, so I have a ride line that goes all the way up to the tip now. Let's see if we can see this in the magnifier. So you can see it goes almost, let's see, almost all the way up to the tip here. We're going to go ahead and work that just a little bit more. And we have a ride line all the way down, although it's a little weak right here. So we're going to do a couple things to adjust for that. So let's go ahead and go back to the waterstone. I'm going to start by working the tip, and I'm going to put pressure on the tip right here with this finger. Do several strokes, come to a complete stop. I'm going to come off the edge of the stone on the top, and I'm going to work this ride area here. Okay, Okay, so this is the area that's right up above where the ride area starts into the cut of the blade. Putting my finger here, holding the handle, working back and forth over the top, kind of bending the shear over the top, running over the top of that upper edge, and then just a few final strokes for cleanup. Check that ride line again. Just a smidge more up at the tip. Over the top. More time with several strokes. I'm going to stop. All right, and that's reasonable. It's not perfect. It's been cut into quite a bit in the throat right here on the shear. Let me show you what I mean by that. You can actually see that this has been sharpened into just a little bit here where it's got the swoop. So we'll take care of that some. And then it's not worth doing any like champering on the inside in order to be able to bring this up. And then you can see up to the tip up here. Sorry, I'm not getting a really good shot of this one here, but you can see I've got a ride line. Come on, get in there. There we go. Getting a ride line all the way up to the tip now. Maybe just a little teeny tiny bit at the tip is missing, so we're going to actually take that tip back just a smidge as well when we do the sharpening. Just so you can see the other blade, you can see that we actually have a pretty nice little ride line right here, all the way down, all the way out to the tip. On this other blade, when we take this tip down too, it's missing right over the top where it's kind of rounded out on the inside up here too, which is part of the problem with the other one. We'll go ahead and take care of that. And I don't know if you can see this very well, but where I made contact on the inside here and around, there's a little bit of a, I don't know, there's a defect like in the back ride area of this shear right here. So we're going to have to see how this cuts. So that's part of the problem too, why there's some issues with the shear. It is a welded handle shear, and I have a feeling that probably came up when they were doing the weld. I don't know if you can see that weld mark right there. Above welds the handles together. That lets them do multiple skews and different kinds of designs with the same blades. And pretty much all of the manufacturers do that too. There is some scratching on the inside surface, but not on the ride line as well on the inside. Because these shears have been worked on, quite a bit. So there's only so much that we can do to completely restore things. So let's go ahead and do some sharpening on this as well. We're going to start by putting this back together. We're going to tip the tips back. We're going to take them back apart again, and then we'll start the actual sharpening process. All right, so I'm going to start off by tipping this blade down. Just lightly tipping it. Pull my magnifier down. Looks like a new lamp is in the future here pretty soon. These will crack over time. So we can see I blunted that tip down. I now have a good ride line all the way up to the tips. Move this on over. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the rounding out portion of this. Let's move this out of the way. Open this slightly. I'm going to round out. If you're worried about doing too much, just turn the speed of your unit down. Remember, you can always take off, but you can't put back on. And all I'm doing is rounding out the back side of what I cut. Now I'm going to come in, I'm going to come around, and I'm going to cut around the outside of that sharp edge that's usually created when you take the tips down on a shear. Same thing here. Around to smooth that out. You don't want it scratching the person's head when the cut is being done. Let's back over. Let's see if we can see that a little bit better. There we go. All right, so those upper edges are rounded out. round it out this way as well. So we're ready to start the sharpening process. All right, so we're gonna try this with the video on. Sorry, I just did a little bit of work on this and thought I was videoing and I was wrong. So back in the, what I'm trying to do, and I'll show you a little bit on the next blade, you can actually still see some of the issues here on this blade where it has, I've started the convexing process. Actually, you know what, here, let me take this out since this happened with the video. We'll go to the magnifier and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we'll drop this down. Let's go over here to the magnifier. Drop this into place. Okay, and you can see how I'm starting the process of doing some reconvexing. There we go. All right, so what I'm doing here is I'm trying to get rid of that more angled look to the edge. I'll show you the other blade. You can actually see that this is angled right here, and you can see that swoop that's in that area right there as well. So we're working on trying to get rid of that, and then I'll show you a little bit more on this blade in just a second. But I wanted to get back to what I was talking about on this other blade, which was when I was trying to do the work, you can see that I'm having trouble getting into this early entry area with the convexing work that I'm doing. You can see I've got a pretty good rounding, or the beginning of roundings out here too on this blade. And I want to do this a little bit better in this early entry. So we'll go ahead and do that on the machine. So I'm going to switch back up, set back up, and get that ready. All right, so I apologize for that. I'm running this machine fairly low right now too, because this was the blade that had the weak area in the ride area in the throat, and I don't want to take off that much material. But in order to be able to do away with some of the struggle of getting into this portion of the blade right here, I'm going to do that by, instead of working over the top of the wheel like this, I'm going to move to the left. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to get all the way up to the early entry of the throat. But it's also, as I come across the wheel to do convexing, you can see that the curvature of that wheel is working up that blade. And I can even move over a little bit if I need to. And that's going to make it easier for me to convex that in. So I'm going to work up to here. I'm trying not to cut all the way down to the edge, although I'm touching the edge just a little bit. And I may have to do a little bit of additional inside ride line work on this. All right, we're going to do just a bit more. Working my way to that edge. One more time. All right, let's dress up this area right here in front of the work that I did to start that process. And I'm working to bring a burr up the blade. And then we'll do a more complete convexing across the face. This is just in the backside throat area, and then I'll work the rest of the blade in just a sec. All right, so let's take a look at where we are now. And you can see we've cleaned up about as much as we're going to get right in this area right here. It's mainly because of this swoop that was cut in originally. If I wanted to, I could switch over to a CBN and actually cut that in. But when we do the polishing, a lot of that's going to blend in as well. So you can still see that there's a little bit of an angle at the tip right there. So we're going to finish this the rest of the way. Speed the machine up just a little bit more because we have a good ride line in this area here. I'm going to start working my way up to the tip until I bring up a burr. You can see I'm doing a series of back and forth strokes along with convexing. And what this allows me to do is disturb the scratch pattern as I do the work. This makes it easier to polish out when I'm done. All right, looks like we brought a burr all the way up to the tip. Now I'm going to do some clean up convexing. I'm going to do some rotation up, and I call this cross hatching. What this does is it allows for additional cleanup of scratches that are on the front surface. Throat just a little bit better again. One more time. Most of this work is being done on the face of the shear. I'm not coming all the way around to the edge. So this would be all the way to the edge, and then what I'm doing is I'm coming like this and not coming to a hard stop each time. Again, if you wanted to avoid hitting the edge, you could always adjust the angle on your fixture if you wanted to. All right, so we're going to stop there. Take a look at the convex now. Magnifier. See if we can get a little bit better shot of that. Shooting in light, man, it's always fun. There we go, that might be better with more natural light. Let's see. All right, we'll just show it after we've done some polishing on this as well. All right, before we do our polishing though, we do need to make sure that we deal with our ride line on the inside. So I'm gonna make sure that, again, I hit that early entry part of the ride line. Bring it back over the stone. Work back and forth, come to a complete stop, lift off. Now we can check our ride line. The ride line is actually really good from here up. Still need to do a little bit of work in the early entry. Always come up over the top of the block when you finish, because you want to make sure you blend in any work that you do in that early entry on the shear. All right. And we have a very small early entry ride line. It will work. It is not as perfect as I'd like it to be, but it's there. So that's what we're going with. There are some scratches on the inside surface of the shear, but there's no scratches on the ride line itself. So all in all, that looks pretty good. Those scratches were there on that front surface, so there's not a whole lot that can be done with that. All right, so next in line is going to be the polish. All right, so the polishing sequence, I'm going to start off by actually putting some more polishing compound on my disc. This disc has a pretty good layer of compound on it already. This is a felt disc over a metal plate. It's attached to a magnetic head on this fixture. I mean on this unit. This is the Kotoku unit. I sell these units. This is the double head Typhoon. I'll leave some information about that down on the bottom of the video. All right, I'm just gonna smear that around. I'm gonna start off by polishing my edge. And when I polish my edge, I'm just using light pressure because I want to remove burrs. I do several strokes. You can hear the sound change as I get to the tip and the throat. I'm at the throat there. Now I'm at the tip. You can actually see the impression of the tip. When I say impression, it's not a pressure impression. You can just see where it's making contact. You can also track the trash coming off of that disc. I'm gonna do about, I've done a little bit more, but back and forth, probably about 10, 15 strokes. Counting 1, 2. That's not a magic number by any means. It's just a number that I use. I usually do about 10. And then what I'll do is I'll rotate up slightly. and I'll do some work back and forth, adding a little bit of pressure, rotate up, adding a little bit of pressure, rotate up, adding a little bit of pressure. And now I'm going to do my convexing on the front surface, doing crosshatch, back and forth across, working over to this side of the disc, just to smooth everything up on the front surface of the shear. All the way up the face of the shear. Doing this cross-hatching again disturbs the scratch pattern. I'm not going all the way to the edge when I do this. And again, if you're concerned with getting to the edge, just adjust your fixture. Working the throat, working the tip. You can hear the difference in the sound change. Getting closer to the edge now. Just bump the edge just a little bit, a couple times, to make sure I'm coming all the way around to the edge of the shear. I'm polishing that tip just a little bit more in that back area up to the top. I always miss up towards the top of the spine of the shear when I'm doing this much work. Don't be an idiot and bump the back of the shear on the fixture like I just did. Jeez. Do a video, screw things up. That's the way it goes. At least it wasn't the edge that hit. I've done that before shooting videos. I have to start back over. All right. You can see the convex on the edge now and how everything is blended together. See that our surface looks nice and shiny and smooth, all the way up to that tip. And we have a shear that is quite sharp and cuts well on this one blade. But remember, our problem was with the shears, the blades working together. So even though I show that in a video, that's not the best way to test a shear. It's always going to be to test it with it together. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the second blade. I'm not going to show that because it's all going to be the same basic stuff. I've shown enough of this, even though I missed that beginning of what I did. You can still see there's just a little bit of inconsistency right in this area here. But for what I had when we were starting off, we actually really have a nice looking shear at this point. You can actually see from here forward, we have a really nice convex on this. All right, so we have the shear back together. I just want to do a little bit of a touch-up polish on it now that it's back together. So I'm going to open up my shear, clamp in the ride area of the shear, just a light clamp on the fixture. Go ahead and polish. I'm not going to polish all the way to the throat on this one again, just because I have a good cut. I'm just touching up just a little bit on the cutting blade. The thumb is always going to be the cutting blade. I'm just polishing the edge itself. Do just a little tiny bit of convexing on that front surface just to blend. Take this out, shut this down. We'll take a look at the shear and then we'll go ahead and do a test cut with it. All right, wipe any of the gunk off of the blade, especially before we close it. I'm gonna ease any burrs off that were on there. We can see that we have now a nicely reconvexed front surface on the shear. It's a little easier to see that way. Again, same thing on the other blade. Inside ride line. Looks pretty good other than a little bit of those scratches on the inside surface. There was a lot that was done to this shear because it was a frustrating situation that my friend ran into when he was doing a little bit of work to try and get the set worked on these. So another quick trick too is try not to sharpen when you're aggravated with something, because that's when you can make other mistakes as well. So, and it just happens. So that's just part of the business. Now I'm going to start right at the throat, work our way up to the tip. You can see now we have a nice cut. So all the way right in that early entry, all the way up to the tip. Go ahead and do a test on some wet tissue to make sure that we have a good cut all the way up to the tip with that test. And the phone up on the side to die in the middle of all that joy. Let's try this again. Cutting from the side as well. All right, so we want a nice clean cut all the way up to the tip, pull away. I also test from the sides because, you know, they'll cut from either side. Cut across this way here. Nice clean cut all the way to the tip. So this has been repaired. It's ready to go back. so that my friend can give it back to his customer. But yeah, realistically with set, it can be a fussy thing dealing with set, but just take your time. It takes a lot of learning. So if there's ever any questions that you have, you're always welcome to reach out to me. And then I also do training as well. Thanks for watching. All right. So the shear's cutting. It's going back to the customer. Well, going back to my friend, and that'll go back to his customer. It was not a perfect job. Also, there are a couple little flub ups in the video. As you saw, I was getting ready to do a test wet, and then the battery died on the phone. Had to go ahead and connect it up so I could go ahead and finish up the video and then do the wet test cut. In the process of doing that, I also forgot that normally I would test on hair as well, which I should have done. I apologize for that with the video. But before I sent it back to him, I realized that I had done this and tested it on here, and it actually cut fine. So hopefully that takes care of the problem. I hope that this was a help to you. If there's anything that I can do or any questions that I can answer for you, please, by all means, reach out. I'll leave some information below on what I do and the sharpening that I do, the training that I do, and the equipment that I sell. So again, I hope that this helps, and y'all have a great, well, holiday weekend, because this is the weekend before Thanksgiving. We'll see ya.